All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. This is the information session for the Residential Energy Contractor Support Grant, also known as REX. We're going to start shortly. We're going to give people a minute or two to join us, but we'll be starting about 12:04. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. Again, you are in the information session for the Residential Energy Contractor Support Grant, also known as REX, which opened this Monday. This information session is being recorded. So if you want to refer back to it, we will send out the recording and it will also be posted on the DSLBD YouTube page once it's been converted over, and I'll send it to everybody that's registered. Additionally, we will be doing a Q&A portion at the end of the session. So if you have any questions, please put it in the chat and then we will go back and answer any questions that you may have. Before we start, I'm going to toss it over to Keith Howard, the manager of the Business Opportunities team, for a welcome.
Thanks, Aziza, and good afternoon, everybody. My name's Keith Howard. I manage the Business Opportunities Division for the Department of Small and Local Business Development. Really, my work is easy right here, which is to just a couple thank yous. First, thank each and every one of you that are taking the time to spend with us about this important work. I'm looking in the chat and I see a lot of familiar names. So good to see you all. I'm glad you took me up on showing some interest in the Residential Energy Contractor Support Grant. I also want to thank our partners over at the Department of Energy and the Environment. Without their partnership, this grant doesn't happen. It's really that quite simple. And they walk hand in hand with us every step of the way. And we want to thank them for that. And then lastly, before I turn over to Aziza, I want to thank her and the BizOps team. In order to pull together these type of grants and the documents that go with it, there are details that you all wouldn't imagine. And it's a lot of work at the end of the day. And so shame on me if I didn't recognize her and the team that supports her around this grant on a job very well done. You'll see the information is very well organized. And I would just say this to you all. Make sure you read the entire document. If you have questions, ask them at the appropriate times. And if there are deadlines, make the deadline, right? It's just fair to the folks that make the deadlines to move them forward. And those that don't, you got to make the deadline, right? So I can't stress that enough. I'm the decision maker on making deadlines and I'm strict on it, right? So the deadline for this one, you have to apply by April 1st, 2026 at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, without further ado, I'm going to turn over to Aziza to give you guys some great information.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Keith, for that welcome. And then we're going to transition to just give you a preview of what we're going to cover today in our agenda. We are going to start off by just going over some key dates and deadlines that are also in the RFA, eligibility guidelines, use of funds, and what the application will look like. And then we're going to transition over into a live demonstration of DES, which it is a change if you've applied for other grants with us in previous years. This is the first year that we're utilizing DES, so we just want to showcase how you would use it and what the interface looks like. And then we're also going to review the award process. And then at the end, we're going to go over the questions that you may have. Again, everything that we're going to review outside of the DES portion is information that is inside the RFA. We just want to kind of highlight it and give a little bit more context to what it is. So as Keith said, we really encourage you to review the RFA in full to grasp all of the context of this session. And again, you can also find the RFA under the current funding opportunities on DSLBD's website, and it will be listed under the grant name. So you'll find attachments both for the RFA as well as the NOFA. So moving on, grant purpose. So the REX grant is a DSLBD initiative to support DC Sustainable Energy Utility, also known as DCSCU Train Green Program participants, as well as district-based businesses engaging in other energy efficiency, renewable energy, and HVAC training or contracting opportunities. And this is, as Keith mentioned, in partnership with our agency, not our agency, with the Department of Energy and Environment, DOEE. And essentially, we are seeking to position eligible businesses to deliver group and one-on-one trainings to district-based businesses and prepare those district-based businesses for subcontracting opportunities. And the trainings will cover back office support, such as proposal and grant writing, marketing, customer recruitment, and account management. If you are curious or have questions about the terms used in the initial paragraph about energy efficiency, renewable energy, you want to refer, there's a footnote in the RFA that gives you the definition that we're using that informs the way that we are reading your applications. And the objective. So under this grant, there's only one program, which is the back office service grant. And grantees will be supporting district-based businesses participating in and or interested in working with within those relevant fields. Once awarded, the awardees there'll be one awardee selected in two different fields. So one of the fields will be in the marketing and customer recruitment, and the other will be in proposal and grant writing and a proposal/grant writing and account management. So you want to make sure that when you start doing your application that you are intentional about which sector you are planning to apply for and are intending to provide services in. And you'll see when we do the demonstration of DES, you'll have to select one or the other. And also, when you do apply for this, you will have to provide at least services to at least 30 DCESU Train Green Program participants and or district-based businesses. So today we will be again going over the request for applications. On your screen is just the first image you see is just the first page of the RFA that details all the different information that will be in the RFA. And then the second is the hyperlink to the DSLBD website where you'll see the current funding opportunities where you'll have to go to find the RFA attachment. And then, as Keith mentioned, we are strict on deadlines here. So you want to make sure that you submit your application by April 1st, 2026 at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, no exceptions. Additionally, we are currently in the questions period. So you want to make sure that you get your questions in by March 13th, which is next Friday. If you don't have any questions today, but you may end up having someone should think about it, or as you start your application, you want to make sure that you send it in writing to the business.opportunities@dc.gov by that deadline of March 13th. And moving on to the eligibility, You'll see in the RFA under the eligibility, there are several things listed. So we're going to go over a couple of them. First thing is you must have an active DC business license number to be eligible for this grant. So you want to make sure that your DC license number, we can look it up in the DLCP business license lookup, which is the scoutdcra.gov. Additionally, you want to make sure that you have a compliant clean hands through the Office of Tax Revenue. We also do require commercial general liability, regardless of any operations you may have. That is the minimum standard for the grant. So at the very least, you do need the commercial general liability insurance. And then you also need your employment You also need your employment identification number. So you want to make sure that you are listing that accurately. You are going to have to put that at several places in the application. We are going to also need your IRS W-9 2024 form or later, and this must be signed and dated within the last 12 months. And then you also need your most recent tax filings. I do want to emphasize that this is not an exhaustive list of the eligibility criteria, but these are what we wanted to point out. You want to make sure you reference the RFA for the full list of the required eligibility criteria. To go further in detail for the eligibility, this is how you want to gather your information for your active DC business license number. This is how we verify that your information is correct. So you want to make sure that you type in the business address and then click on that briefcase icon with license under it. And once you do that, you'll be able to identify your business. Make sure that you enter the number that is aligned with your business here on this portal, on the Scout DCRA portal. And then again, make sure that as you're entering it, you are not making any typos that otherwise we are not going to be able to find your business. And you want to make sure that it says it's active. If it's not active, we will not be able to accept it. Additionally, I know some of you may not have a DC business license number, but you have an alternative licensure, such as in the case with lawyers, professional services, child care centers. So you want to make sure that when prompted throughout the application that you upload that alternative licensure. This is required again. Moving on to the clean hands. So you want to make sure your clean hands has all of the following things. So one, you want to make sure that your clean hands is in the name of the business. Sometimes we've had people submit clean hands in their name as the business owner. We cannot accept that. It has to be in the business's name. Additionally, it must be compliant. Also, as we said earlier, the EIN or the FEIN number, that has to be consistent on the clean hands as well as everywhere else that we requested. So you want to make sure that that EIN number is the same as the ones that you've entered throughout the application process. Additionally, the clean hands must be dated December 1st, 2025 or later. Even if it's November 30th, we cannot accept it. It has to be December 1st or 2025 or later, and it must be verifiable in the mytaxdc.gov. Additionally, you want to make sure that your clean hands is compliant throughout the entire application process. So you want to make sure that when we check it, which is after that April 1st deadline, that it remains compliant. And if you are awarded, it is also a requirement that you maintain that compliance throughout the entire grant period. And just to showcase how we verify your clean hands, we go to mytax.dc.gov. And then if you scroll down, you'll see a section that says clean hands. And then as you see encircled here, validate a certificate of clean hands. This is how we do it. So you want to make sure that you do this yourself to make sure that it is in fact compliant. And you want to make sure that you have a clear notice number on it. Sometimes it could be blurry. You want to make sure in the upload of your clean hands that that notice number is clear. Next is the certificate of insurance. We want to make sure sometimes it could cause a little bit of confusion that you're uploading your certificate, not the declaration. Additionally, even though the baseline is um, the general insurance, if you do have employees or if you have an automobile under your business, you are also required to upload that as well. So you'll see some questions asking you if you have employees. If you mark that you have employees, then we will be looking for that workman's compensation insurance. And if we don't see that, then we're going to have to mark you as ineligible. So make sure that you are consistent across the board on what you're marking and then the proof of documentation that's required based on your markings. Next is the employment identification number. Again, you want to make sure that you list this number the same across the many places that we ask for it in the application process. So you'll see that this is asked in at least 4 different places, which is the application summary, during the required eligibility. We will also the last 4 digits must also be consistent on the clean hands and then on your IRS W-9 form. So it must match across all 4 of these places. And then before we move on from eligibility, again, the last thing is the IRS W-9 form. You want to make sure, again, that it is the 2024 form or later, and that it is in the business name, and that, again, your EIN is consistent across elsewhere that you inputted it, and that it is signed and dated within the past 12 months. Moving on is the use of funds. So you'll see that there's 8 sections. These are the titles of the section, and the descriptions of these titles are actually detailed in the RFA. We do also want to emphasize that the final approval of the use of funds will be provided through the grant agreement and will always be subject to approval by DSLBD. We want to make sure that you should always keep in mind the intent and the program plan of the grant to ensure that how you intend to use these funds align with the work requested or agreed to. So again, you want to make sure that it's consistent. So you can't request to use funds in a way that doesn't make sense to the scope of the grant. And then disallowed use of funds. You want to make sure this is an extensive list. You want to make sure that you review this list, and then during the application, we do request that you create a program budget. You want to make sure that when you do that, you are keeping in mind the disallowed use of funds so that you don't enter a budget item that is clearly disallowed. Again, this list is pretty extensive, so make sure that you review it in the RFA. Application types. So under this grant is a competitive application. Once for applicants who meet eligibility requirements, they will be scored. But if you do not meet eligibility requirements, then you will not be scored. You will be automatically out of that pool. Once eligibility is conducted, eligible applications will be moving on to be scored on their answers to the competitive application, which the questions are listed in the RFA. The scoring criteria. So when panelists are reviewing your questions, they are going to be using the scoring criteria. So this is the total amount of points. This is a direct screenshot from the RFA once again. So to get the full grasp, you want to refer to that. But when drafting your answers to the competitive applications of the RFA, you want to make sure you reference how each area is evaluated and it's weighted. So to give a little bit more of a context on the review process, during the review of the competitive application for eligible applicants, you can refer to the Appendix B on the RFA, which is titled Allocation of Points, which break down how each question is weighed, giving you an insight of how each answer can contribute to your overall score. Yes, so you just want to make sure that you're keeping in mind when you're drafting up your answers that you're really spending the appropriate amount of time on each section. Award information. So there is a process of, if you are going to be an awardee, that we initiate that process within the RFA. You'll also see a timeline. It's not on the screen here, but you'll see a timeline of when you can expect certain things to happen during the grant. In terms of the NOGAs, which is the Notice of Grant Awards, you can expect that to be issued around May 15th. And during the NOGA process, applicants may be asked for any documents listed in the Appendix A, pre-award document requirements in the RFA, such as their program and budget plans, policies and procedures for their business. And if you are a nonprofit that's applying for this grant, things like your board roster and your IRS 501c3 determination letter, you want to make sure to carefully review Appendix A for this exhaustive list. Additionally, this process can include edits and clarifications. So as I mentioned before, things like your program and budget plan, we may need to make edits before we input that into the grant agreement and approve that. So just as indication that that will probably happen for those of you that move on to the award process. And once the program period only begins once the grant agreement is signed and executed. I'm sorry if you can hear that noise in the background. Unfortunately, we're going through some construction. Continuing on in the award information, there will be a reporting process that comes with the grant award for awardees. Reporting is broken up into two parts. So one is the activity reporting and the other is the financial reporting. Both of these reports will have to be submitted through the DES system. For activity reporting, there will be an interim and final reporting requirement, which will be laid out within the grant agreement. And you can refer to Appendix C of the RFA report for what those reports will cover. Some of those items will be program outcomes and achievements, but again, the full requirements and guidance on what you will need to provide in reporting will be extensively laid out within the grant agreement if you are awarded. Additionally, in terms of disbursement will begin after the execution of the grant agreement. And as a heads up, grantees will need a business bank account to receive these funds. So make sure, if you haven't already set that up, you do have a business bank account to receive funds. Last but not least, for award information is modification. The final grant agreement may require addendas, amendments, or modifications. Our team here at Business Opportunities and DSLBD will work with you on that to make any of those adjustments if necessary. So before we actually transition into the demonstration part of this session, which I'll have my colleague Rosalia Turkios, she'll showcase how to navigate the DES portal to complete your application. You'll see on screen here images of what you will see when you initially are logging on into the DES portal to start your application. So I'll stop sharing my screen and then Rosalia will share her screen to walk you through what that process will look like.
Perfect. I'm gonna start sharing my screen in just a second and we can get started. Share. Okay. Can everyone see my screen now? Yeah, okay, perfect. All right, so what I'm currently sharing is the main page to our DES portal. You can find the link in the RFA. And so when you log in, you're gonna see 3 different boxes. To access your grant applications, you want to click on the button that says click here within the grant portal square. So click here. And then you're going to be taken to the grants portal within the DES. And so you'll see this navigation bar. In this first option here, grant opportunities, you can click on it, and then you want to click from this drop-down menu on the option grant application. This page will then display all of the current funding opportunities available with DSLBD, and you'll see that right at the top, you have the grant that we're at the info session for here today, the Residential Energy Contractor Support Grant. And to access that application, you would simply click on the hyperlink of the grant program name. It'll take you to a new page. You'll see some additional details like the grant program description, the application open date, close date, time, and then a link that will redirect you to DSLBD's current funding opportunity page should you want to access the RFA and review that before you start your actual application process. But then once you scroll down a little bit to the bottom, you'll see a button that says Start Application. So then I'm going to click on that. And then this is essentially like a survey form that's going to ask you to fill out information about yourself, about your business, and upload some of those responses to questions within the RFA. You'll get a little bit of an intro text here or provide a reminder of the last day to apply, where to access the RFA, and if you have any questions, you'll see the business opportunities team email right here. Then again, click Start Application to keep moving forward in the form. And then this is essentially part of the application. It's going to ask me to select my preferred language. I'm going to do English, then click Next. And then it's going to ask me to select the option that best describes me. So I have two options. I am the business owner, or I'm helping the business apply, and I have signature authority. I'm going to select that I'm the business owner. And you'll see that some of these boxes are grayed out, and I don't necessarily have access to edit it. This is information that the system is pulling from my user when I created my account in the DES. So really all you have to double check is that your phone number is correct. And if you need to adjust your title, you can do that. So I can say like CFO or something. Then I'm going to click next once I've made sure that all the questions that are required are filled out. So basically anything where there's a little red asterisk to the left of the question. And then I'll move on to the next section. We have the eligibility question section. This is almost like a pre-screening. I'll ask you some basic things from the RFA, like do you have an active business license? And then just answer these as appropriate for your business. And I'm just going to click yes for all of these. And then once I finish filling out all the required questions, I can move on to the next part of the application. Which the next part is business information and documentation. So this is where you'll upload all of the documents that are in that required document checklist, as well as provide some details about your business. So I'm going to start uploading some files. Let's see if I have a sample upload here. Okay. And then it's going to ask me to select what type of tax identification number I'm providing, EIN or SSN. What my tax classification status is. I'll put just sole proprietor for now. And we're going to double check these against the documents that are uploaded. Then it's going to ask you to upload or type your business license number. I'm going to type a fake number. And what you'll see, depending on what you type, the system will always provide a little notice, right? So for me, since I provided a fake number, it's telling me business license number not found. But if you were to provide a valid business license number associated with the business, you'll get something like, we've identified that the number provided is associated with whatever your business name is, and then it'll provide a reminder to make sure you maintain an active status throughout the period of performance. If there's something other than active as your status, maybe it's like expired or expiring soon, something like that will also give you a notice just so you're aware of where your business license status is. After typing the number, I get asked to upload my business license. So I'll upload a document. And then similar process for the corporate registration file number. Type your number. Depending on what you type, you'll get a notice here letting you know it's active, not active, or it's not found. And this is pulling information directly from Scout. Then for the L notice number, you want to type the number that appears on your clean hands. This doesn't verify against any of the information in OTR, but the system does ask you to upload your clean hands file. So then just click upload. And then the last section is going to ask you to upload required certificate of insurance. So depending on what applies to your business, you'll click on upload files, select the document from your computer, click done. Then you also need to upload your most recent set of tax filings. Upload, let it load, then click done. The last question is optional. So if there's any other documentation you think is necessary to support your application, especially in this like business information section, you can upload it here. Once I am done, let me make sure I filled out all the required fields. Filling in everything, I can click next. And it's going to take me to the competitive application question section. And so you see all of these questions already, excuse me, written out in the RFA. This is where you're actually going to type your responses. So select the service area you're applying for. I can pick one or the other, and then just start typing my responses. You can feel free to type them in a separate Word document and then come back in and just enter everything when you're ready. There is also an option here to save for later. The system doesn't automatically save as you go, so you want to make sure you're just clicking on the save for later button throughout the process so you don't lose any of the work you've done. And then I'm just going to fill in some of these other required fields here. Just make sure I'm answering everything where I see a little red asterisk on the left-hand side. Test. And I believe the system does cap responses at a maximum of 5,000 characters. So just so you know, you don't write something too long, it might not fit in these spaces. Test. 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 And then here is a final section. There's no red asterisks, but you guys have the option to upload a PowerPoint or letters of support. You would just, similar to all the other file uploads, right? Click upload files, identify the document, and then select that one to get posted. So then double check I've answered everything that's required. I can click next. And then there's a demographic section. These are all completely optional. If you don't want to answer these, it won't affect anything in your application process. You can just click next, and then I'll take you to the attestation section. In the RFA, there's an appendix item labeled Statement of Certification. This attestation section is basically the digital version of the Statement of Certification. So you don't need to print it and sign it and upload it to the portal. You're just filling out everything on this page here. And that serves as your statement of certification. So I'm just going to type in responses to the required fields, my phone number, email, and then you want to make sure you take time to read through the disclosures. If it applies, select agree, and then same thing, answer these as it relates to your business. Then here, if I've received like DEMPED grant, for example, I type it here, DOEE, and then you can provide like the fiscal year and the name of the grant name. Same thing here. If there's any subcontracts or subgrants, you would type those responses here. If it doesn't apply, then you can leave it blank. Test. Test. And then we have one final section where you can upload any additional documents if necessary. Then I can just toggle back and forth to review all of the responses in my application. And then once I'm ready, I can click submit. And then it'll give me this notice here. You have successfully submitted your application. If I want to come back to my application, let's say I didn't submit my application today, I wanted to keep working on it tomorrow. similar way to access the records, right? You have two options. Here in the navigation bar, you have your grant opportunities tab. You can click on grant application, and since this program is still open, the same way we accessed it to apply for the first time, we can click on the name here, or you can click on my application, and then it will show you any applications that you've started, and you can click on them through here. So I can click on my application here, and then it'll show me a summary of everything that I basically submitted. All the documents I uploaded will appear here on the right-hand side, some general program details, and then when I scroll all the way to the bottom, this is essentially my application and the responses I provided. So that is navigating the DES, how to navigate the DES if you want to access an application a day after you've started it. Maybe you want to take a few days to work on it. You can do grant opportunities, my application, and then I'll show you everything that you've started here. And then that is everything. You will get any email reminders from the application process as well. So 7 days, 5 days, 3 days before the deadline, you'll get reminders. Any corrections, they get sent via the DES, although I believe for this program, there is no corrections period, but you can count on getting reminders through the DES portal. That's all for me. I think we might do a Q&A after this. Aziz, I don't know if you wanted to mention anything else before we pivot to the next section.
Yes, as you were going through, I did want to just give them some reminders or just some clarifications that might help them as they're going through. I'm resharing my screen, just give me a moment. Yes, so just going back, this images is just to give you like a slight idea of what the web page looks like, but just from the beginning, because I think Rosalia was already logged into her portal, you will need to create an account with DES to complete your application. So if you are already a CBE, you could just use that login and log in that way and just navigate to the grants portal. But if you aren't and you don't have an account, you will have to create an account, which is pretty simple, but just a heads up. And as Rosalia mentioned, you do want to make sure that you are clicking that save for later option, or not option, but button. But also our recommendation is, if you can, typing it out in a Word file just so that you have it in your storage and then transferring it over that way. In terms of the additional uploads that you'll see in the RFA and in the DES portion, it is not required, but as you'll see in the RFA, there are actually points allotted to it. So just keep that in mind for the additional uploads portion. And then if you do have any questions, if it's specifically about DES, you're having a hard time navigating it, or there seems to be an error, you want to submit a case directly through DES so that they could assist you that way. If you have questions about the actual contents or clarifications on the RFA, you could always email us at the business opportunities email. But for more technical questions on DES, you want to submit a case through DES, and then somebody through the portal will assist you with that. Okay. Moving on, we did just want to showcase these important legal disclaimers. You'll see this in the RFA as well. So you just want to make sure you fully review it to make sure how this grant is governed and the legal context of the grant. And so now we are going to head over to the Q&A portion again, because this is a pretty, it happens every year, but you want to make sure that you are submitting this your questions by next Friday, which is March 13th, 2 p.m. to the business.opportunities@dc.gov email in writing. So after today, when we conclude this information session, we will not be taking any phone calls, or if you see us out at events, we cannot answer any questions about this grant. You will have to send it in writing. So I'll just go into the chat and start from the top and answering questions. If you have any questions, again, input them in the chat and then I'll go through them. So the first question is that license number the same on the actual license from DLCP, the DES system doesn't seem to recognize the number from the basic business license. So you want to input the license number, your basic license number from the DLCP. If you are seeing an error on DES, as long as you are sure, sorry. Even if you are seeing an error, it's not gonna not let you move forward in the application. You just want to make sure that you are inputting the correct license number. Rosalia, do you want to expand on that a little bit, or?
Yeah, I think there's two things. One big thing that is flagged is that make sure you're typing the correct number. It's not going to impede you from being able to submit your application. And that's also part of the reason that for this program, they're asking you to type the number and they're also asking you to upload your actual business license. We'll have both pieces of information to verify for the eligibility review process. And then if the system isn't recognizing your license number, sometimes it just takes a second to load. You also want to make sure, give it like 1 minute for it to load. There's also a Google Chrome setting. Let me share my screen really quickly. It affects some people, mainly people on Chrome. You want to make sure that you have updated this setting. So I'm in my Safari page, right? If I look where the URL is, I see these little gear icons. You want to make sure that the local network is on. I don't know why, but it typically making sure this is on allows for like DC's scout system and the DES to speak together a little bit more efficiently. So you just want to make sure that is set up. That could be another reason that it's not displaying your number. But again, type your number, make sure you're typing it correct. Even if the system doesn't pick up the number through like the Scout system, you'll still be able to submit your application and we'll review that against the document that's uploaded.
Thank you. Yes, so resuming on the next question, what is the maximum amount? Sorry, are we able to apply for all grants that we are eligible for? If so, how many grants are awarded? So within this grant program, it's just one grant. If you're referring to the different portions, whether it's the marketing or the grant writing or proposal writing, you are only able to be awarded in one section. So if you can apply to both if you wish, but you will only be able to receive one grant award. What is the maximum amount that could be awarded for each grant? So per the RFA, the grant is up to $48,500. So that is the maximum amount. What is the character limit for responses? I believe it is 5,000. You could thumbs up, Rosalia, if that's correct.
Yeah, 5,000 is correct.
Yep. Okay, perfect. All right. And then we have, does having previously been awarded grants from a DC agency affect an applicant's score? No. So that section where Rosalia was going through, I think it was the statement of certifications, that's just for us to gather that information, but that does not have points allotted to it. For the business tax question, if business taxes are reported on your personal filing, would you need to submit all of the personal forms, federal versus DC filing? Well, I'm not 100, I don't want to give you the wrong information. So whoever submitted that question, if you could just send that via email, and then I will have a response for you via email. And if you guys could, if anybody else has that same question, just let me know and I'll send it out to the whole, those registered, or I will also be sending a frequently asked question. So I'll include that in there just for anybody else that may be interested in the answer to that question as well. You mentioned that this funding opportunity is also intended to support DC businesses and subcontracting. Can you elaborate on how this will be accomplished and implemented? So the way that this is intended to work is that this grant is going to a business that will be providing the back office services. So again, the proposal writing or grant writing, the marketing, customer recruitment, those things, you are going to be supporting those businesses build up their capabilities in those fields to be able to go after subcontracting or contracting opportunities in the fields that are identified in the grant. Additionally, just based on the way the grant was formulated, those areas were seen as areas that sometimes businesses do lack in. So this grant is intended to build up the capabilities of DC-based businesses in those areas. I have a clarification of scope. Are you looking for a vendor that provides all of the services listed for the back office training to the companies, or can a vendor provide only one or two of the services areas for training? So give me a second. I'm referencing the RFA to make sure I'm giving you the correct names. When you're going into the grant application in DES, you'll see that you have to select one or the other. So those are the proposal grant writing and account management, or marketing and customer recruitment. So whichever one you choose, for example, marketing and customer recruitment, you have to speak to both of those things. And the same thing with proposal grant writing and account management. You have to speak to both things listed in your answers and how you're able to provide the back office support on those topics. I hope that was clear, but if not, type in the chat, or you can always email and we'll provide further guidance. I am referring to all grants that are in the DES grants portal. So I can only speak to this grant at this time. I cannot, all grants have their own requirements and how they award. So I can only answer for this grant. This grant, I believe your question was about being awarded, how many could be awarded. You can only be awarded to one grant under this grant program. Given the scope of this opportunity, are 1099 contractors allowable for CBEs to utilize in completing some of the work? So there is guidance in the RFA about subcontractors. Subcontractors are allowed, but you do have to identify them during the application process. So you'll see guidance on that in the RFA. And again, I will always, because there is specific guidance in the RFA about this, but subcontractors must be DC based as well. They have to be DC based businesses. Okay, and then since the focus is on back office support, I did not explicitly see program management support. Is that an allowable service CBEs can provide? So again, you have to speak directly to the items mentioned. So in this case, it would be the proposal grant writing and account management, or marketing and customer recruitment. I think that was the last question. We do have time until 1 o'clock, so I'll stay on this chat just again in case anybody has any questions that they want to input. Again, this is being recorded, so once this is converted over to a YouTube file, I will send everybody on here the recording. And that is pretty much it. Again, I do want to emphasize that question period, because I know this is a lot of information. The RFA is pretty lengthy. So once you get a chance to review it, if you have any questions, to send them over to the business.opportunities@dc.gov that's on the screen right now. And then we can answer your questions that way, or any questions I may have given even during today. If you need a little bit more context or elaboration, just email us. All right. If that is it, again, I will be staying on till 1 o'clock, but for those of you that don't have any questions, this concludes the information session. Thank you so much for all of you for coming to this session, and we hope to see you apply. Thank you, everyone. Hold on. Hi, so we actually some one of our partners from DOEE is on here, and I think she's raising her hand. So I'm gonna give you the capability to speak, Jennifer. Hopefully that will give you the option. Okay. Were you trying to speak, Jennifer? If not, I can.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aziza. And thank you everyone for taking the time today to learn more about this funding opportunity. I just want to mention that the funding for this specific grant is a federal source. So be sure to, look closely on the attachment so then you fully understand the reporting requirements associated with this funding. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So we do have another question. For the proposal and grant writing grant, do we have to focus on the HVAC, green energy, et cetera, proposal writing, or just how to respond to proposals and grant writing in general? So you do want to provide context to your experience in providing proposal writing or grant writing in those fields. So you do want to provide that you have expertise in those specific fields. Yes. Another question, when will we know how many businesses will utilize our services? So there is a requirement to get at least 30 businesses. We will support you in that, connecting you with the DCSU Train Green program, but the requirement is that you service or provide the services aligned with whichever part of the grant you're awarded, the proposal grant writing or the marketing customer recruitment portion, you service at least 30 district-based businesses. Yes, again, so another question, can you clarify cohort size and period of performance? Cohort size is it. So there will be two ways that you will be providing services. So you'll be required to do a group training, and also you'll be required to do one-on-one sessions and within both the group trainings and the one-on-one sessions combined, it's a requirement that you service at least 30 DC-based businesses. And in terms of the period of performance is from the grant execution date, which typically is around late May until the end of September, September 30th, 2026. So another question, so CBEs are required to find the 30 businesses or will they be directed to us? So it'll be a combination. So we will be supporting you by connecting you with the DCSCU list, but you will be, part of it is also identifying the businesses that require this help. But again, during the grant agreement process, we will work with you to figure out how you're going to market this to the eligible businesses that can participate in your programming. So for the follow-up question, if CBEs market to recruit businesses but do not find any, will this award be revoked? So again, we will be supporting you in the process of finding the, identifying the businesses to support. But in terms, if you do have specific questions about how the expectations of the grant, I would say shoot us an email and we could go through that. But again, we will be providing you support and further guidelines on how these businesses are identified. But again, I do want to highlight that a major target of this is already the businesses that are working with the Train Green program at DCSCU. So there is already a field of opportunity which we do directly work with DCSCU. So you'll get support on that end in finding your cohort.
And let me just jump in there, Caesar, real quick. This is Keith again. So on that number, one, the number's gone down. So in the past, it's been higher than 30. Two, we haven't had, since I've had the grant in 2022, we've always made the number. So I think that past performance, coupled with the support I know we're going to give, coupled with the list of from the DCSEU, I think any grantee would be in good shape to exceed the number.
Thank you, Keith, for clarifying on that. Yes, so at that mark, we are at 1 o'clock. Again, thank you so much for all your questions. This definitely does help not only you, but all of the other applicants that are interested. Before we log off again, probably the 5th time or so, I do want to encourage you guys to, if you have any follow-up questions, just send them to the business.opportunities email. And we will also, again, be sending out a FAQ of all the questions that we see that are coming through, just so that you can have them at your disposal as well. Yes, thank you. All right. Have a good day, everyone.